Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to my mid-year freakout book tag. This is the book tab that's been around for forever, in which you sit down in the middle of the year and think about all the books you've read and all the books you still have to read. And in this case, this year has been especially weird because I went back and I realized that, oh wait, I read that book this year? Could have sworn that was last year. So this is a very long tag, so let's jump right in. First up is the best book you've read so far, and that is insane. And I tried not to do any like doubles on the list, so I'm going to go with the hyped book that lived up to the hype, and that is Deal with the Devil by Kit Rocha. I got this as a raffle winner, an ARC, and this is basically a post-apocalyptic world in which this group of mercenary librarians has to fight to uncover all of the reading materials from when the world wasn't post-apocalypse. And in this case, they end up teaming up with this group of super soldiers who have their own reasons for the team up, maybe not the best ones, but it is essentially two found families coming together with a ton of bisexuals, so I am all for it. I was really hyped for this. I read it like within days of it coming to my house, and I was super happy. I actually went and looked into Kit Rocha, the writing team that makes up that pen name, their previous indie work. I've only read one of their indie books so far, but I might have a new favorite author pair. Next up is the best sequel so far, and that is Dog Warrior by Wen Spencer. I also hate this book because it is the last in the Ukiyo Oregon series, but I'm not wholly convinced that it was meant to be. This is super kitschy sci-fi from the early 2000s, all about this young man named Ukiyo. The entire series revolves around him figuring out his past, and I will let you know that like aliens are involved. And this book I particularly loved because it focuses more on Ukiyo's long-lost brother and his brother's boyfriend. And it was so cool to see a queer protagonist from the early 2000s, even if it wasn't a little-known sci-fi paperback. But this is the last in the series, however, it didn't feel final, and part of me is wondering if the author stopped writing it because there was just a lack of interest, or if it was just a poor ending to a series but was meant to be that way. I can't exactly be sure. Up next, the new release you want to read. There's a ton of them. I have recently jumped into looking into trad books only insofar as it relates to diverse or minority authors, because I still don't very much care about trad books, but I do want to be supportive, and there's a ton of great books by POC authors out there. So the one I think that has been released that I have not gotten to yet is Daughters of Henri by Renée Amayo, and this is a sister story. I love those, all about these twin girls who are separated and basically have to awaken their own powers to more or less save the world. I love sister stories. I'm not sure what culture this is steeped in. I think Nigerian, but I could be wrong. Editing Margaret. Thank you. So I am really intrigued on this one. I don't have it yet. I'm still deciding to check with my library or to buy it because I don't get paid in the summer, so I want to own books, but also money. Moving on. Editing Margaret here. I totally forgot. Daughters of Henri isn't actually traditionally published. It's published by a Black-owned independent publisher in the UK. So now this is even better, and I'm definitely going to have to move it up my list. Still don't know if I'm going to buy it or not, though. My most anticipated release, aka the book that has not actually been released yet, I believe this is coming out in July, and that is Larger Than Life by Maria Sherman. I heard this being discussed on a podcast, and once I realized this book was a thing, I now need it. This is basically a nonfiction book all about the history of boy bands from New Kids on the Block up through K-pop and BTS. So I am super excited. I was a diehard NSYNC fan back in the day and only recently realized that their feud with Backstreet Boys was purely based on their manager, and actually the dudes are all cool with each other now. So 10-year-old Margaret has a lot of words she's got to take back. But anyway, I'm trying to get more nonfiction. This is a lot lighter than a lot of the nonfiction I've been tackling lately, so it won't be the only nonfiction book I read that month because I still want to keep with the hard stuff to educate myself, but this seems like some good pop fun. Up next, the biggest disappointment of the year goes to Mother Knows Best by Kiera Peikoff. This is a book I was supposed to read last year because I got it for review and it already came out by the time I actually got around to reading it and doing a written review. I don't believe I ever did a video review. I've kind of given that up if I don't like the book. But I was disappointed in this because it had a lot of cool ideas in the premise that fell through. Characters that got happy endings that should not have gotten happy endings. This is about a new genetic idea in which you can basically splice two different parts of a woman's egg from two different women together to overcome like genetic defects. And this woman who had a child die at a very early age because of this illness decides to do it. And then it's illegal, so they have to go on the run. And now the other woman, the second mother, basically has to chase after them. The thing is that that premise was so absurd. I wanted this to be much more melodramatic. And also the characters that are like leaving other people out to dry to get their comeuppance. But instead, the one woman that's raising hell because she was wronged is also kind of evil. So we don't have to worry about the fact that our protagonist totally wronged her. Like, it needed to be more schlocky. It needed to be more melodramatic. It needed to know what it was and also give its protagonists their comeuppance. As it was, the child that was created out of this procedure was really the only character that I liked. Moving on. After biggest disappointment, of course, comes biggest surprise. And for me, that was Dark and Deadly Things by Kelly Martin. This is one of those books I got for free off of BookBub, and I read it because it was short and I wanted a quick book to get through, and I loved it. Very voicey. This is all about a young girl, well, not young, like in college, who used to be on her father's ghost hunting show, but realized that he was kind of faking it. And since she can kind of see ghosts and knows that they're real, she's really annoyed that he's faking it. So she decides to quit. But right after she quits, there's a live broadcast of a Halloween show for them, and the majority of the family is murdered, and her father is the main suspect. And she ends up teaming up with the only surviving member of that family to find out what happened that night. It's super voicey. I loved the main character, and I don't usually like tsundere-esque points of views, but she was aware of her like angstiness as it was happening. There was one part where it was like, the character says in dialogue, "I'm not being moody," followed by, "I was being so moody." Like, I love that self-awareness. It was, again, a little bit more schlockier, a little bit knew what it was, ghosts and such. I didn't necessarily like the setup for the series, but I am intrigued by the fact that it is a series, so I will likely be continuing with it. Up next is favorite new author, and this goes without saying, but this is only a new author to me. He is fairly established at this point, and that is Rick Riordan. Yes, I am so late to the game. This was the first book I had ever read by Rick Riordan. I have now officially read the first of the Magnus Chase and the first in the Percy Jackson series, and I like Magnus Chase more. But I loved how satirical and funny this book was, but also had a lot of heart and diversity in the cast. I will still be continuing with Percy Jackson because I didn't hate that book. I just think that you can definitely see the decade of writing experience that happened between those two books, and I am probably a bigger Magnus Chase fan. My newest fictional crush, I was originally going to say a different one when I started this list, but then I read another book since writing this list, so now clearly it has to be Ezra from Felix Ever After. Ezra is goals. The main character in this book is a trans man, and Ezra is his longtime friend and like most ardent defender and protector, and is very woke. But also just a sweetheart that always wants to cuddle, and like, I love him. And that scene at Pride. Anyway, very big fan. Very glad this book lived up to the monumental hype, but I would highly suggest this for anyone that wants some nice, good who am I angst coupled with an adorable romance. Newest favorite character, that would be Tina Chen from Trade Me by Courtney Milan. This is a romance. I believe it's one of those set in the same universe, but every book in the series is a different pair getting together. This is a Chinese-American woman who moved over from the country when she was a little girl and meets this super rich guy in her class, and super rich guy is dealing with some things of his own, and he offers her to trade lives with him. I loved Tina because she was so down to earth and so on top of things and called out like every one of the romance tropes as they happen in the book. Like, a lot of the same tropes happen, but she's on it. And a lot of things that you would let pass or not even think about in other romance books, she like dissects there in the dialogue. And it's awesome. I loved her. I definitely need to read more Courtney Milan. Up next is the book that made you cry. And yeah, don't know if I fully cried, but I definitely had a blanket wrapped around me, I'm not okay moment. But that is Colosseum Arcanist by Shami Stovall. This is the third in the Frith Chronicles book, one of my favorite indie series right now. And the ending of this book, well, first of all, like 100 pages from the end, it stabs you, and then like waits 75 more pages to twist the knife. And it was a great ending. I loved it. I'm so excited. I have the next one. I have Plague Arcanist, and part of me is like, I have to read it, but the other part of me is like so scared because I got through 700 pages to get punched in the soul. But this revolves mostly around the group, such as it is, going to try to stop a giant snake from being awoken and also getting caught up in a tournament. You get to see a lot of fighting, and then things happen at the end that I can't say because of spoilers. But like, Shami, you don't have to do me like that. We're friends, right? Anyway, I'm super excited for this series. The next book is also fairly chunky, not as bad as this one. I think it's only, that one's under 600, so it's almost like 150 pages shorter than this one. And Shami has me so much under her spell that I will read all of that gladly. Up next is a book that made you happy. I could have picked a lot of books for this, but the book I picked for this instead is a lot focused on it was a happy read when I needed a happy read the most, and that is Wildfire Griffin by Zoe Chant. This is the book I started the day we got our first foster placement, when I was like panicking and still not quite sure how I was going to do this and anxious. I knew going into it that I was going to need a very light-hearted book, and I picked this one, which is a shifter romance, one of those very quick ones with a happy ending guaranteed, and fairly standard, except for the fact that A, there's a lot of firefighters, which I loved, hot shots specifically, the ones that go to fight forest fires, and our female protagonist is autistic. I do not know whether or not that is own voices. I did a little bit of research into the author, but I can't find too much. But I loved how the autism was represented and reacted to by most of the characters. Everyone's on board with it. I was just really happy about that, and it was your standard schlocky shifter romance. And I really needed it that day. And so this is a shout out to the book that helped me escape for a time when life was moving really fast. Up next is a favorite book to movie adaptation this year, and that would be Nun. I don't really watch them. I don't necessarily read a ton of traditional books that would get made into movies, and then when they are and I like them, I don't want to see the movie because I have a hard time divorcing the movie from the book. So usually I just stay away. Most beautiful book you bought so far. I've checked a lot of pretty books out from the library so far, but the most beautiful one I bought has to be The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. This is a sci-fi about a girl who meets an alien that loves pop music. And that's most of what I know, but like, just that alone, I'm already on board. And it has a lot to do with the censorship of art, and I love the cover. It's so pretty, and I follow the author on Twitter, and she's awesome. So I'm just really excited for it. I just have no idea when I'm gonna fit it into my reading. There's so many books I want to read. Up next is Favorite Review You've Written, and that was the review for By Sea and Sky by Antoine Bondelet. I loved it because I got to say the phrase African sky pirates a lot, which is just a top tier marketing phrase. And this is all about a woman who essentially has to save her husband, so woman saving the man. It's all based in African and Middle Eastern cultures. There's not a single white character to be had, except for like the literal albino person, but even then, still African. So I loved the adventure of this, and I always love those reviews where I just get to talk about how much I loved things and how excited I am for it moving forward. And it was just good and nice. And again, I got to say the phrase African sky pirates a bunch, and I love that. The last part of the tag is what books do you need to read by year's end? And I don't know anyone that can like specifically have a list of all the books I need to read, because to me it's always like one giant massive book staring me in the face demanding to know I haven't read them yet. Suffice to say, I plan to read a lot more nonfiction, specifically anti-racism books, but also educational stuff in general, memoirs and the like. I also need to read a lot more review books because I am currently soft closed, aka closed except to everyone who meets certain requirements of what I'm specifically looking for to add to my recommendation list. So definitely gotta catch up. But I've had a fantastic reading month in the month of June, so I'm sure I can step it up and get going. Thank you so much for watching. I know this is a very common tag, so I hope this doesn't just drown in the sea of them. I am definitely loving everything I've read. I'm excited for the second half of the year. I'm also excited for this year to not feel so ungodly long. But regardless, if you have read any good books the first half of this year, or you would like to do something like this, please let me know. Drop the links to videos down in the description below. If you can do that, I think you can. But anyways, with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.